With the Eagles looking to continually build a basketball team on offense in 2024, Johnny Wilson, Parris Campbell, Grant Calcaterra, and some of the other role players are going to have to step up to the plate and pick up where the big four leave off. All that and more on today's edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everydayers? Welcome on into yet another edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast, your only daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, delivering you 5 episodes each and every week. As always, we're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every day. I'm your host, Gino Camilleri. On today's show, those role players have to step up to the plate on offense, while Grant Calcaterra, Parris Campbell, and the rest of the gang are going to be called upon heavily in 2024. You talk about the big guns on offense, why Jalen Hurts and his health are so pivotal to the success of this offense in this new season. And finally, it is Friday, and as always, it is Fan Friday. I'm going to leave you with an ode to the fans and just how great Eagles fans are after open practice at Lincoln Financial Field yesterday. But before we dive into it, this episode is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Right now, make every moment more as playoffs wind down. The sports stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone, every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. So, on offense for the Eagles, we've talked about them in the 6 years that we've hosted this show between Lou and I as building out a basketball team when it comes to the position group. I would say on a yearly basis. When it comes to building out that room, you look at 2017 and how the big three between Alshon Jeffrey, Torrey Smith, Nelson Agholor, you throw Zach Ertz into that equation as well, how they all balanced off of each other. And they were legitimately building a basketball team. You look at the body types and the profiles of those guys, with Zach Ertz and Alshon Jeffrey being the guys that are going to play in the paint. Those are going to be your post-up, possession-style players, 50-50, go get the ball in the air style receivers. Then you look at what Torrey Smith was for that team. He was a burner. He was go down the field, take the top off the ball, going to be your gunslinger for this team, somebody who they might not touch the ball 8 to 10 times a game, but when called upon, they were going to hit big in big moments. Just look at the NFC Championship game on the flea flicker. Bigger moment, bigger time, bigger play. Name one for the Eagles. It's going to be tough to find one. And then you throw in Nelson Agholor, who's your swing guard type of player who can do a lot of the possession style stuff, can also be a run after the catch guy for you, and at times had his moments down the field for the Eagles. They've tried that to mirror that model, I would say, as they moved on, as the years continued on. They've tried to change it up a little bit. You look at 2020 where they just went track team-esque, where they went very small, almost this new style Alabama type of offense, if you like college basketball, where everybody's just so much smaller and you're just trying to outpace the other team. That didn't work for the Eagles. You look at Jalen Reagor and how that didn't work out. And Deshaun Jackson 2.0, he didn't work out for the team. But now you get to this collection of talent in 2024. I would say that they have a group that, when you're looking at body type and play style, how these guys match up with each other, it mirrors 2017, I would say, more than most groups in recent memory. Because you look at A.J. Brown, is he like Alshon Jeffrey when it comes to play style? Absolutely not. But is he that power forward type of receiver that is going to be a tough matchup when smaller guys are trying to guard him? He's going to be difficult to take down in the open field, which mirrors well with DeVonta Smith, who he is an unbelievable route runner who can slice and dice you, but he's undersized and He's that, you would say, that Steph Curry type of player where they don't fit the size measurables, but they do freakish things in the way that they play. Dallas Goedert as well. He's that big guy in the middle of the field who he's going to win all those 50-50 balls for you. And he's an athlete, and he's a really good basketball player in his own right. No doubt about it. But you look at Saquon, who's going to be now a bigger style guard for you, who's going to push the pace when it comes to delivering offense in both the pass game and the run game. And I did a lot of talking on what it's like to build that basketball team, but you look at these receiving units and how they're going to attack other teams. If you're building this group the exact same, look at 2020. Teams are only going to have to find one style of player to defend against you. Well, in 2020, you take away the deep ball, you take away the long game, these speed style receivers, well, you're going to beat the Philadelphia Eagles. Well, you look at 2018 where they're a little slower, more plotting. If you take away the underneath game, the Eagles don't have somebody to go and get the deep ball. But now with A.J. Brown and DeVonta and Dallas Goedert throwing Saquon, the big four are there. Now what you need is that fifth and sixth guy. Basketball teams at the highest level win because of that fifth and sixth guy. 1 through 4, they can be outstanding, but you're only as strong as your weakest link. Now let's take a step back to 2022. In 2022, they severely outpaced 2023 when it came to role-playing production outside of the Big Four. Big Four being AJ, DeVonta, whatever running back. So DeAndre Swift last year, Miles Sanders the year before. You're going to throw Saquon in there into this equation this year, and Dallas Goedert as well. He's part of the Big Four. But outside of that, so in 2022, you're number 5 in terms of overall production when it comes to total yards from scrimmage, both on the ground, in the air, was Kenny Gainwell with 409 overall yards and 4 touchdowns. Quez Watkins was number 6 at 355 yards, 3 touchdowns, and Boston Scott had 232 yards with 3 touchdowns as well. So that's 996 total yards through players 5 through 7 when it comes to role players and production. That pseudo 5th, 6th man when it comes to that basketball analogy. And they had 10 overall touchdowns. So you're talking about close to 1,000 yards as a receiver on the ground and 10 touchdowns. Put that together, that's a pretty good player who's going to garner a good contract. But they've already paid their top end players. You have to have production like 2022, because if you go to 2023 and look at players 5 through 7, Kenny G, who was also number 5 last year, had 547 yards with 2 touchdowns. But then it was a steep drop off to Olamide Zaccheaus at number 6 with 164 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then number 7 was Quez Watkins with 144 yards and a single touchdown. You were outpaced by 5 touchdowns and 143 yards from 2022 to 2023. The big dogs did their part. But if they get hurt, like they were in stints last year, you need those other guys to step up. And not like 2023, because that was a letdown. But if you could get production like 2022 and get close to 1,000 yards collectively out of players 5 through 7 and 10 touchdowns, that's serviceable. You can win games because of those guys in the NFL. And they will keep you afloat at times, especially in a season where the Eagles, they don't have a bye week, which is closer to the middle of the year. It's closer to the front end. They're going to go a long stretch of games where the depth players are going to have to step up. A.J. Brown, we love him, but as he played every single year as a 16 or 17 game receiver, no. He's been banged up at times. DeVonta Smith, he could be banged up at times. Dallas Goedert can be banged up at times. Heck, anybody on offense can be. You can't turn injuries off. I say that all the time. This isn't Madden. This isn't college football 25. If those guys go down, who is the next man up? Well, one player that I think we should be a little concerned with that I didn't mention in 2022 or 2023 was who they potentially believe can be not only the 5th man, But the next guy up in the tight end rotation and potentially be the number one if Dallas Goedert is down and out, which he has been as well, in Grant Calcaterra. Grant Calcaterra had 39 yards and 0 touchdowns last year. Jack Stoll had 38 yards and 0 touchdowns. And you know who tied Jack Stoll and only had 1 less yard than Grant Calcaterra last year? Rashad Penny. Now, Grant Calcaterra, what Coach Sirianni and what Howie Roseman, what Dallas Goedert say about him, it's promising. But to only outpace Rashad Penny by a yard last year, that's a big window to step up into. Parris Campbell, who you were expecting to probably be that number 3, he's only surpassed 500 yards a single time in his career. Now, is it Johnny Wilson, who at Eagles open practice started to get some reps with the ones? He's a mismatch nightmare, the tallest receiver in the draft, the tallest receiver in the history of the draft, 6'7". It's a lot to ask from a rookie. But all you're asking for, you're not asking for 2,000 yards and 20 touchdowns. You're asking for 2022 production, where Kenny, Quez, and Boston got you 996 yards and 10 touchdowns. Now, between Kenny Gainwell, who you would assume law of averages probably get you close to 500 yards, 2 or 3 touchdowns on the season. Now, between Johnny Wilson, Grant Calcaterra, and Parris Campbell, can those 3 guys get you 6 or 7 touchdowns and anywhere between 600 to 700 yards? You would probably put your money in the basket of Parris Campbell when it comes to opportunity given. Grant Calcaterra when it comes to the biggest role that he could step into if one of those players does go down. And Johnny Wilson is the biggest unknown because Parris Campbell doesn't present much of a threat as an outside receiver. So if AJ goes down or DeVonta goes down, is that Johnny Wilson who steps up into that role? Regardless, the 5th and 6th man are pivotal on this Eagles offense this year. You know what the big 4 are going to give you, and you hopefully know what a healthy Jalen Hurts is going to give you. And that's what we're going to continue to talk about on this Friday edition of LOE, why it is so important for Jalen Hurts to be fully healthy going into 2024. Stay tuned. This episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by our friends over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and much more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride or die every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you ever need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. And again, we thank eBay Motors for sponsoring this episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast. All right, everydayers, welcome on back to the Locked On Eagles podcast, and thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. And if you're sick of watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day and you have to turn down the volume, you're sick of just continuing to press that down button, make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for your everyday to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure you subscribe to our show so you could catch every single episode wherever you're listening to us or watching us here on YouTube. And speak of watching, if you were one of the many who got to see the Philadelphia Eagles live and in person, you were able to catch Jalen Hurts, who right now looks like a very scary human being because he looks to be fully healthy for the first time in a long time. And Jalen Hurts, the thing about him that a lot of people like to say, and they say it tongue in cheek, and a lot of people tend to say it seriously, and shame on them, but they make the joke, oh, he's just a running back. Well, I take that joke and I look at it and I say, well, yeah, he is good enough to be a legitimate NFL running back. If you take the ball out of his hands, he could take, as a thrower, that is, he could probably take 20 carries a game and still be good to go. Somebody who squats 600 pounds, you look at his frame, you look at his build, that's exactly what you want in a running back. But the thing is, he also has an absolute laser on his arm, and he could drop dimes like he was doing all over the field at Eagles open practice and has been doing over this early segment of training camp and the preseason. And it's showing that he is getting an early confidence in this Kellen Moore offense, which is allowing him to continue to show off his swagger. And the best part about Jalen Hurts is his ability to do things out of structure. Now, getting back to the running back element of Jalen Hurts, I believe last year, one of the things that hindered them incredibly badly was the fact that Jalen Hurts could not be that running back element to this team. Because once they started running these RPOs, which only really turned into handoffs because Jalen Hurts was not a threat to pull the ball and run, because for a large majority of the season, he wasn't moving well. Towards the end of the year, he started to become that player once again, but he never was the same player he was back in 2022. Where if you take a step back to 2022, one of the talking points I used a lot on the show was why Shane Steichen made Jalen Hurts the player he was because he took advantage of Jalen Hurts and his running back style of play and use that to advantage to make them essentially a 12-on-10 offense. Because when you look at a player who can run the ball as effectively as Jalen Hurts can, but he also can throw the ball as efficiently as Jalen Hurts can, the things you are able to do when it comes to shifting the pocket, when it comes to moving the play off platform by setting up easy bootlegs for him to take advantage of personnel mismatches when teams want to go heavier in base sets where they're playing more guys on the line of scrimmage that fit that typical defensive end, defensive tackle mold. Well, we can use him as a runner. We'll pull it and get to the edge, and he'll pick up 6 to 8 yards on average. Now, you always put a player in conflict when Jalen Hurts has that potential, because you're essentially saying we have to spy him at all times, but not just spy him to pull and run. That player in conflict now has to account for the running back, which is your read player, and then you throw in the pitch element of it, which there was a play. Shout out E-Rock. Everybody on Eagles Twitter knows E-Rock. He tweeted all of the 11-on-11 sessions from Eagles practice. Shout out to the Eagles for being super cool with that. It's how us fans that can't go to the practices live vicariously, so shout out to him. But there was a play where Jalen Hurts, they read with the running back. He pulls it. He bootlegs out to the left. He could get to the edge, but he also reads the edge player, and then he throws it to DeVonta Smith on a wide receiver screen type of play, and that's all possible because you have a healthy Jalen Hurts. If you have to keep Jalen Hurts in the pocket, which isn't a bad thing because he lifted this team at times through the pocket the last 2 seasons, you can win games. But are you going to really handcuff teams into essentially playing without that 11th guy on defense and essentially playing too short? Because you present the running aspect and the passing aspect. Jalen Hurts can do 2 things. As a quarterback, it isn't just an 11th man. You are now adding 2 guys to your offense, a runner and a passer. Now with Saquon. Now with hopefully a more effective motion-based offense that gets defenses to move their eyes around. And just a healthy player at the quarterback position who, if you look at 2022 versus 2023, I would say 99.9% of us take the 2022 version of Jalen Hurts, who, yes, he did run a little bit more, but did he put himself in these insane positions to get him knock himself out of football games? He did. The Chicago game, we know, that ultimately got him dinged up a little bit. But when you could capture that run out of necessity and run when you need to, and you could go for 6 to 8 yards a clip. And teams, when they're in the defensive meeting room, the first thing is, how are we going to stop Jalen Hurts as a runner and as a passer? That makes it much more difficult even before you step on the field. But if Jalen doesn't have that full capacity to run the ball, go back and look at probably week 4 through 11 or 12 of the season last year. Could he beat guys to the edge and just destroy their angle like he could do in 2022? No. Was he willing to take on big hits and extend plays like he was in 2022? Probably for the betterment of his health. But did you still have that when needed to? That people love the Josh Allen, just that wild card element of not knowing what you could do when all the chips are stacked against you. Without Jalen Hurts' legs, he's not that Superman player. He's not. And that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing at all. Because in today's modern game, that's every young quarterback that is being drafted. That's every young quarterback that's being paid. You have to have at least some asset when it comes to mobility. But Hurts has an elite asset when it comes to mobility. He has the option to go under center and be the tush-push god. He has the ability to stretch run this thing till the cows come home and hit the edge. He can go between the A and B gaps if you need to. He can be an option style player, and that has nothing to do with how good he is as a passer. But none of that is possible if he isn't fully healthy. They have to protect him. He cannot take as many hits as he's taken the last 2 years, especially behind the line of scrimmage. He has to do a better job of either getting the ball out of his hands, throwing it away, or the offensive line has to give him time and know that the magic of Jalen Hurts comes from these prolonged sessions in the pocket. But there has to be a give and take. There has to be this ebb and flow between them both. But without a fully healthy knee, without a fully healthy ankle, without any fully healthy lower half injury of Jalen Hurts, you probably get a version that is closer to 2020, 2021, 2023 than you got in 2022. Because the best version of Jalen Hurts, a fully healthy Jalen Hurts, even when he came back after that injury in 2022, he was closer to 100% than he probably was at any time last year. He becomes superhuman at times, and they truly need to have him back. But all signs are pointing in that direction. You look at the clips that are being tweeted out, all the beat reporters are talking about it. A lot of the players are saying he looks like he has another gear. To hear a player like that, who is already scary enough, add another gear, that's why you take a shot on a guy like that winning the MVP, no matter what the odds are. Because teams, they have to game plan for a guy like that, because that's a guy you win because of. You can win with him if he's at 50 to 60 to 75%, but you win because of him when he's at 85 to 100%. So, moral of the story, keep it simple, protect Jalen Hurts. Because all the fans want to see him, just like the 50,000 of you that were at the reported open practice. It's Fan Friday. We got to talk about how great Eagles fans are. So come on back as we finish up this Friday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast. This episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs are over, we get fewer games to watch. And the sports that we like, we don't get to see them anymore. But with FanDuel, you get to keep in on the action whenever you want. All you have to do, open up that app and dream up bets anytime you are in the mood. Right now, the Olympics are going on. All 4 major sports are going to be back. MLB is in full swing. No matter what you love, you can get in on the action this summer with FanDuel, and they are hooking all customers up every single day with a boost or bonus. That's right. Daily, every single day, somebody is going to win something every day, all summer long. Head to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball and the entire Locked On Podcast Network. All right, Gino Camilleri wrapping up this Friday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast. Thank you to our everydayers for joining us here on the show. If you haven't already, join one of the many everydayers by subscribing to the show, whether you're watching or listening along, so you could take in all the Eagles news and follow along with this team that we love. Welter training camp, the preseason, into the regular season, and season 7 for Lou and I here at Locked On Eagles. And speak of Lou, one of the things he loves to do is partake in the Eagles Autism Ride every single year. I believe he's been doing it for at least 3 or 4 years now at this time. And yesterday, as part of the Eagles open practice, a large amount of the proceeds, and the Eagles Autism Foundation retweeted a tweet from the Philadelphia Eagles that the 50,000 reported fans at the practice raised $600,000 for the Eagles Autism Foundation just to watch the Philadelphia Eagles, the team that we love, practice. We're talking about practice. Now it's Fan Friday, and usually we take questions or something along the lines that fans are wanting to get the word on. And usually on Friday, we take questions. We want to hear what our LOE everydayers have to say. But for a second, I just need to stop and tell the world. Eagles fans are the best. There's nothing better than Eagles fans. People are going to use their corny jokes, cornier than the Nebraska Cornhuskers and the entire state of Iowa, about how fans threw snowballs at Santa and they threw batteries at other fans of teams, and the stories that you've heard a million times, and put a jersey over Rocky Balboa and make fun of the people of Philadelphia. Well, if you know the people of Philadelphia, one of the 50,000 that was at practice, one of the many that has gone to the Eagles Autism Rides, one of the many that shows up in Sea Isle to have a couple beverages with Jason Kelsey and a couple Eagles to raise money for the Eagles Autism Foundation. Whether you're the fans that are planning a trip to Brazil to see this team in a stadium where you can't even wear green, and I guarantee you Eagles fans are going to wear green in that stadium. There's nothing better than this organization and you, the fans. 31 other fan bases. They can get their tweets off. They can make their jokes. But if you really know the numbers, the neighborhood, the family feel, and how much this team gives back, it all starts with the fans. If you're a rookie and you walk into that stadium in practice yesterday, how do you not want to give everything to this team? You talk about guys like Deshaun Jackson, who they weren't in Philly for half of their career, but they're so connected to the city. Connor Barwin, he was only in Philadelphia a handful of years, set up his entire livelihood in the city. Chris Long won a Super Bowl with the Patriots, but he's barely recognized as a Patriot or a lifelong Ram. He loves the city of Philadelphia and embraces it. And it has to do with the fans. Eagles players, the ones that they might not last, they might not like the fans and get out of Dodge. Well, they weren't meant to be Eagles. They weren't meant to be Sixers, Flyers, whatever team they play for. Philly fans want Philly players. Seeing however many people showed up to that practice yesterday and raised $600,000 on top of what you did at the Eagles Autism Ride each and every year, on top of what you do for the players, just treating them as human beings in the city. And I love all of you. You are great. Eagles fans are the best. It's Fan Friday. Yesterday was my 30th birthday, and I just really took a step back. And how cool is that to see in the middle of the summer on a beautiful Thursday night, Phillies are one of the best teams in the NL. The Olympics are on. And all you psychos are going to watch the Philadelphia Eagles practice. Hats off to you. Hats off to you. And for a great cause. And for the way that you buy into the team and players buy into the team and players' families buy into the team. I mean, Kylie Kelsey could probably run for the mayor of Philadelphia tomorrow and win. And that stems from the fans. It's the best. Midnight Green, Kelly Green. You get to go Birds in the middle of the day. There's nothing better. And I could rant all day about Eagles fans. But this Fan Friday, I just needed to take a step back and recollect on how amazing you are. And that showed it. And don't let anybody tell you differently. We're all we got. We're all we need. Fly, Eagles, fly. And that's going to do it for me, Gino Camilleri. Thank you as always, and thank you to the fans, LOE Everydayers. It is truly an honor to get to do this each and every day. To go from talking about who's going to be the sixth man and talking about X's and O's and exact numbers to just cherishing this team and the bond that we get to have because of it. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for making us your first listen each and every day. That'll do it. I'm Gino Camilleri, as always, signing off. But before I do that, if you haven't already, make sure you go check out for your second listen, the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. Just like me, a lot of our listeners, I know you love the draft. Even though we just had one a couple months ago, you're going to be doing your mock drafts before you know it. The draft dudes, Joe Marino, Kyle Krabs, they take you inside the front office, making you a smarter NFL fan every single day. So stay up to date on training camp and positional battles as the season draws near. Locked On NFL Scouting is available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So thank you, everydayers. Truly appreciate each and every one of you. If you haven't already, subscribe to the show. Please, please, please tell everybody you know about us. Make sure you interact with us on Twitter at GC24_football, at DiBiase LOE, and the main page at Locked On Birds. Subscribe to all the Philly Locked On podcast shows. But that'll do it. Enjoy your weekend. Stay safe. We will be talking about Eagles training camp as they inch closer to their first preseason game against the Baltimore Ravens. That'll do it. As always, I'm Gino Camilleri, your host, signing off. Fly, Eagles, fly.